Hello everyone, my name is Turk, and this is going to be a Logix tutorial where I say it fast so you can learn fast. And then you can be big brain as everybody else brain boy and girl that are here. There's a lot of brains. They're cool. You get all kinds of cool information. Anyway, jokes and memes and goofiness aside, I'm gonna be explaining Logix and at least in some form some concepts and just how to do a general Logix tutorial because we kind of just need one to kind of like onboard people and kind of introduce and kind of understand how it works for the most part. Because most people come in and they're like, "What am I doing? Who?" Anyway, jokes aside. First thing I'm going to teach you guys is how to interact with your Logix tip. If you don't know how to use your tool, you're going to have some trouble. Like, say you need to use a hammer. Okay, let me hammer with the other side and then, like, break your fucking thing you're trying to make. Because that will happen. So, if you don't know what you're using, you're going to have some trouble on how to use it. Duh. So, first thing what we're going to do is I'm going to teach you guys on how to ref. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open an inspector window of this box over here. Let me switch to smooth POV. I'm going to select that box right there. You'll see a gizmo appear on it that will let us indicate that it's selected, and that if we open an inspector, you know what it is. So what we're going to do is teach you guys about refing. I don't see it mentioned too much in some of the older tutorials, but it's very, very important. Because without not knowing how to ref, there's a lot of stuff in Neos you won't be able to do, or be like, I don't know how that works, or what am I doing? What refing does, it lets you assign or pick up things to use in interactions. For right now, let's say with this Logix tip, other tips will do other interactions, which you can find out and figure or ask to figure out. If I hit secondary while this box reference is in my hand, by what I did was I aimed my laser at an interaction point on the inspector, because you can see interaction points are things that just highlight when you highlight over them, and holding grab. So I'm going to aim at this, grab with my controller, and then this appears in my hand. Don't let go because it's very important. By hitting secondary, I spawn a Logix interface. This is very important. It lets you know what a slot is and then some of the properties that Logix lets you do. Because at its core, Logix is a language that lets you affect the properties of various slots or objects, same name, same thing, that lets you do things in Neos and make things really quick, fast, and easy. So the other reference interaction that you can do is when you have this in your hand and you hit primary, is that it opens up an inspector. By doing this, you can access or kind of interact and do things that you need to. Because, like, say, I need to access that. How am I going to access that? Oh, you know what? I'll just open another inspector window and go up. You know what I mean? So every tool will have its different interactions and stuff that'll make it a bit easier. But each one will generally have a action that has when you have a reference in hand or hitting secondary and then or hitting your primary. So, next thing on the topic of things is how to pack and unpack your Logix. So, right now, that box is selected, right? We're not going to pack into that box, because if I pack into that box, that Logix is going to go all over the place, and you're not going to have fun looking at it. Because then it's going to be like, oh, fuck, there's a bunch of shit flying everywhere. So, what we're going to do is we're going to grab the box reference here, and then while this is in my hand, after grabbing that from the inspector, I'm going to open my context menu and hit Set Packing Route. You'll see on my Logix tip that there's now a purple box text here that indicates that this is where the Logix will be packed once I pack it. By doing so, I can now hold secondary while nothing is grabbed, aim at any Logix point in the world, and if I zap it right now, because I have, this set up, it's going to stop at any other node, so it's going to connect to everything that's connected to that one node, and by doing so, everything connected disappears, and it's now all under the box there. So now that you pack your Logix and like you're doing the function of whatever you're trying to occur here, you want to unpack it so you can tweak or edit it, right? So there's two ways you can unpack it. You can select the object itself underneath and just hit unpack, and then it does it. Or you can find the root of the object and then ref it again and then hit unpack on your context menu to do so, which makes it a lot easier. Next thing that we're going to go over is the node browser. It's the thing where you get all your Logix nodes. It's all the full fun words, fun, cool things. Generally, when you're first starting out, the one thing that you need to know and be aware of is you won't use everything. You won't use everything. It takes some time. You got to play with stuff, kind of have fun, just learn the ecosystem to some degree. But generally, what you would use when you first start Neos is operators, flow, users, slots, string, and transform, and variables. Anything much more, you won't use too much unless you're trying to do certain things. Some other notable ones are also actions and inputs and math. But depending on what you're doing, that's what you might, you gotta get used. You gotta play with it, because by making mistakes and kind of fooling around with stuff, you learn faster, you get on board faster, and you kind of like get tweaking and making cool stuff in here, which makes it really fun and easy. So now that you know the node browser, the next thing you need to understand about Logix is that components, completely not too accessible from the Logix tip, but are very important, because look, this is a box collider component. Oh, wait, it has a Logix interface. Would you look at that? These are very important because at its core, most of these Logix bits here that you see me talking and raving and ranting about are components themselves, but they have different interactions depending on how you unpack them. See, for example, from Euler, that one right there, that just takes something and turns it into a rotation that you can use in some form. By doing so, and having things like these, Logix and components can interact with one another and have a very strong interaction and like ecosystem that lets you do a lot of things with it. So understanding how to attach components and use them is very important, because you select the object you're trying to find in the inspector. So we have from Euler here, and then I don't know, I want to attach new components, I'm going to click that. Components will generally be everything in Neos that we're interacting with for the most part. You're going to see everything here be used in some form, in some UI, some game, or something, because even Unity works in the same way as well too. So, for the most part, like, say, I don't know, I want to add, like, I don't know. Let's make it so that, like, that node over there is just going to constantly look at me. So what we're going to do is we're going to go with transform, drivers, auto look at user. Now, every time I try to, like, stare down this thing, it's just going to stare at me. It just hates me. It's just fucking Euler, from Euler, fucking just looking at me. That's a lot of fucks. Anyway. So generally, components and Logix interface really well, and they're very crucial and interchangeable between one another, because, say, sometimes you need colliders, sometimes you need user stuff, grabbables, interaction stuff. There's like UI, there's like so many different things that you could combine and use with Logix in the long run to do this. So now that we know the general of how to, I'll have something over here that you folks can look at and kind of have a general idea of just like how it kind of works. So by looking at this, like, it's just, I'm doing nothing too crazy. I'm just adjusting the properties of this box here, right? It also happens to be the base material of the world. If you don't know what a material is, don't worry about it. So I'll explain it later. So it's just changing that box, making it dance and do stuff. Like, I'm just taking the time, doing some sign math, and then this I'll explain in a moment. And then just packing it together so that we have the different types. Because the other important thing in Logix is knowing your types. So by looking at this and pointing at my Logix tip, you can actually see what the type or what the input is called. So like we have operands here, and then we have a float 3, that's what comes out. We have a x, y, and z. It ends up becoming x, y, and z. So it gets pretty intuitive at the long run, and if you're ever unsure of what a node does, you can just highlight on whatever the thing has, and it will tell you. Like, for example, this type you see right now is called an impulse type. Impulses are what allow us in Neos to just go from point A to point B, execute operations and interactions that make it very easy. So basically, if I hit this button right here, it's going to pulse off, and the box is going to stop up there. But if I hit this one more time, oh, that's the wrong box. The box comes back. Box didn't have a box went poof. So yeah, for the most part, pulse interactions will be your, I'm going to do a thing, this does a thing type. But then stuff like floats will be your number with decimal type. And then over here, we have a rotation, which is going to be your number with degree type. So ultimately, with Logix, it depends on what types you're using and what kind of things you want to be interacting and doing with. So the more meat of the stuff. Another thing you need to understand in Logix is that there's a couple different types of references. The main reason I explained references at the get-go is because a lot of people don't realize what's happening when you're like connecting things together bit by bit. So essentially, if you come over here, we have like a couple different references I have set up here for you to kind of explain. So if you ever see a triangle that's hollow, what this means is that it's gonna be a reference. It's a reference to something like this. This is a reference to a slot. The color is green. It matches up pretty easy. This is a this is a Logix reference, but you're writing to it since it's pink. So it's essentially, if I go find, say, something like So this is writing to this right now. I moved the arrow to make it a little easier. But if I go here real quick, open this up, find the actual node itself, and you go in the float 3, you can see a Logix reference right here. That's what that little pink thing is, because essentially the ref is parented underneath the float 3, see? So by doing this in that way, you're able to indicate and know generally what thing is connected to what, and it makes it really handy in the long run in many situations. Now this one down here doesn't specifically have a color, because typically a lot of the color interactions are left for stuff that will be doing a certain function or action. This type of reference means it's a more dynamic reference type. So it actually has more to it. It's not just a number. It's not a value. Leon did a good tutorial about values and just what they do and what they incorporate. Because with this, these are values. They just hold a simple number or letter, or really it's just letter and numbers, really. It's just simple, very archaic data types. Now, when you get to more complex stuff like references and whatnot will be more complex. So you can't just call get this, get that, get this, get that. Sometimes you have to step them down and step them up in some ways to interact with them. So by having stuff like this is a SyncRef IIS provider. Don't worry about the big name, not really that important. But I'm referencing the mesh right here. And by doing so, you see that the colors actually match up once I dereference this reference. So in a lot of ways, you can, by having this type of system, you can know what you're referencing, and say if something ever breaks, you can just pull out from here, drag, and then you just know what to do. Also, just to know, if you don't know what I'm doing with the Logix tip is you connect things by holding primary near the nodes and connecting bit to bits. So I can just duplicate this a bunch. I'll break this. Cool. But if I come to here, hold primary near it, and then drag out, and then connect it to here after letting go, it's just going to connect and quick reference everything as you do set up stuff and do stuff. So yeah, Logix is kind of cool that way. So the next thing I'm going to explain is drives. Drives themselves are the same way type of reference node, but they act a little differently. So what a drive is that there's two types of interactions typically in Neos at its core. What you will have are writes, which is a function that will actively do something, and drives, which will passively do something. Now, there's probably more nuance and more in-depth info that you could find out about this and ask either Frooks or anybody else. But for the most part, writes are, say, something you want to do actively, and it syncs your data model right away. Drives are something that happens over time, and if, say, it's a little lossy, it's okay, because it's not the small numbers that count, it's just the general feel and ideal of what you're trying to go for. So typically, if you have a lot of operations and you just want them to happen, not care and not think, drives are your go-to. But if you say have something active like physics, which I don't recommend doing for a first project, I don't know why, everyone likes to do physics for their first project, writes are very important because they're actively syncing what you're trying to do. So in the long run of things, it helps, but also it can have its issues too, because some people will just take writes and use them like drives. You don't want to do that because that causes unnecessary lag and a lot of issues down the line too. Because the thing is, writes can happen very fast, very fast. I'm just clicking really fast, but imagine this happening about 20 times faster, because it depends on your internet speed typically. And with stuff like that, you can get really fast and really chunky really fast, because you're typically in Neos, you're hosting your own connection, you're hosting your own world. So not to get too crazy off topic and get things too off segue, but for the most part, some things that you need to know and stuff like this are important, because without knowing this, you won't be able to correctly set up stuff, do things, and have things be in a way which will help you in the long run. Or just why don't this work? Why is this laggy? Why is everybody complaining? It's stuff like that. Over here, I have a simple drive just to control the color. And all I'm doing is just connecting color to the material node, which is basically the thing that's called and drawn as you're running around with this box and whatnot. And it's just changing the color. I don't have to do anything. Yeah, could I write it? Yeah, but it only does it once and it doesn't actively change. That's the thing. So if anything, think of a drive as just a very passive write, but it doesn't require priority. Because in situations of learning, in situations of doing something very passive, but you want it to be active, it's important because say like somebody has bad ping and they're trying to do something and they're like over there, but you're here because your connection is faster. It's stuff like that sometimes because of just how the sync rate works and just how sometimes stuff takes time from to get one person from person A to person B. So it's stuff like that. So now we're at the point of the tutorial where I'm trying to think of what else I might be missing, to at least some general Logix tips and tutorials, things that you kind of want to know. Don't worry about your first project. Just do something, mess with it, learn it, make some mistakes, and get it. Your first project will never be pretty. I remember mine. It's annoying, loud, and not fun. It's like, hey, look, I hate a turret. It does a thing. Because for me, my first project, I said, you know what? I'm going to mess with rotations. Was it fun? Yes. Did I fuck up? Yes. But you know what? I learned that you don't want to parent a child to its parent because child parent is not good. Because after doing that, everybody literally decided to become a loop-de-loop. And it's just like, it won't fun. It wasn't fun. Anyways, for the most part, Logix in itself is very versatile in what you can do. Sure, there are some limitations, which we would get with a collections update, allowing us to have arrays, which a lot of us really want, and to do more complex stuff really fast, really easy. But at this point in time, we have to wait. So other stuff comes in first, which is important. Because we need a new UI, which you can't see me open it, but it's really smooth and swanky. So just to kind of go over some last final notes, Logix is just a really nice system to do scripting in Neos because what it lets you do is it lets you change properties of slots that can affect stuff in the world. Like right now, while this cube isn't in front of me right now, I turn this on, that goes false, which flips this, causing the cube... Wait, where'd the cube go? Cube! Oh, I turned it off. Oh. Wait, did something break? Oh shit, I think I broke something. Oh fuck, wait. No. Oh no! It hid behind me. But, like, all I'm doing really is just like, I'm touching the cube's, like, ability to move, and ability to rotate, and ability to scale. That's all I'm literally touching right now. You can see that right here. Because these are the things that are affected as it's connected. It makes it really easy. Some other more complex stuff I'm sure will be around at some point, but these are just like a good general Logix overview and understanding and some recommendations of just what to do. Because while even this tutorial might not be pretty, I'll admit I went over everything and anything that you guys generally should know. Anything more than this is just getting into more advanced stuff and getting into more crazier, nuanced things that aren't really super important when you're trying to get in, but you just want to understand how stuff kind of works. Because, for example, I'm going to go over this one last time before I say goodbye to everybody, and then we'll be very sad because I won't be teaching you Logix anymore for today. But, so, last final recommendations. Flow. If you want to do anything impulse related, go to Flow. All your impulses are here. There'll be some other impulse stuff, say in like slots or transform, but typically impulses are going to be your operation of whatever you're trying to do. If you want to do any type of simple math stuff, unpack stuff, assign stuff, Boolean logics, string stuff, type getting, just anything math related or Logix related, operators are going to be your steg. If you want more specific math functions, math is very good because you have rotation, random stuff, binary stuff, even like simple sign and trig stuff. So it helps in the long run of things. Other notable ones, input will have a lot of stuff like time, just simple numbers, all kinds of stuff that you would generally want when you're trying to do things. Slots, just a lot of slot. Oh, there go. A lot of slot interactions. You get all kinds of stuff here. Slot children events. I love this node. This node's the best. I love you. Love you. Children counts, destroying slots, destroying slot children, duplicating slots. So it's like, it's really easy to kind of just figure it out because literally everything is just visually there for you in some way. Sure, you might not know what something might do, but literally you go by the name, mess it with it a second or two, and you just kind of know what it does. It's not really like that super hard to assume what it might do in some form. Sure, some of these slots might have some nuances, like for example, if I go here, find child by name. See, this says match substring actually defaults to true. Normally, if you say you don't want it to match the substring, you actually have to turn it off. So there's some nuances like this which should be better visualized, but it's not that super like of a dramatic thing that people will run into on their first day. So Logix itself is very cool. It's very neat. You can do a lot of cool things. Like, for example, I'm gonna spawn a fishy. The fishy, it go chomp, 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 and I can chomp. And this is literally all done just with Logix. Sure, it might be a little bit more advanced because I'm doing a little more reference trickery with this, but it's just chomping. He's just having a good time. He likes my hand. But as always, guys, thank you for watching. Sorry if this tutorial wasn't as 5 minutes, but you know what? I've tried a couple of times to record this, and it's a little painful. So, thank you for watching. If you ever have any questions, let me know. But this is part 1 of a general Logix tutorial of just how to get started in Neos. Part 2 will go over some maybe more tips or tricks a lot of us will do, and then part 3 will probably go into the more like custom stuff if I ever get around to it, or stuff gets added and I have to add to it in some form. So as always, guys, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. I will not be re-recording this video again. If I do, I will be editing it, because first take is best take.